So, I decided to do something that I probably shouldn't have. After all this craziness of Elden Ring and the DLC that I've been playing, I decided to take a little break from the craziness and go back to Dark Souls 1. This is going to be a little off-the-cuff kind of thing that I noticed. So far, I played all the way up to the gargoyles, a little bit beyond, but that's about it. So, there's a lot I noticed going from something like Elden Ring back to Dark Souls, which is where, not where it began, that would be Demon Souls, but where to most people began. Including me to some extent. I'll probably make a video about my experience with the Souls series a little while later, not right now. But it's kind of interesting how much you notice when going back to Dark Souls from something like, say, Elden Ring. Elden Ring it's a really big game, and it's kind of interesting how quaint Dark Souls feels after all that time. Everything feels a lot smaller, a lot more quaint, you could say. It's just like, it's just here, and it's a little more linear, at least for the start. I know Dark Souls isn't a linear game, but compared to something like Elden Ring, it certainly is. It's just like, you start here, go here, and I actually do end up missing the plunging attack because there aren't really plunging attack in Elden Ring, so I missed that. That was a goof on my part. But anyways, it's just like the scale is so much different than Elden Ring. Everything feels so small and tiny and cramped, and one thing I got to learn is you got to kill enemies. In Elden Ring, you can just run from enemies. That's not a problem. Even in most of the dungeons, you can just run away from them. In this game, no, you gotta kill them or else they're gonna chase you to the ends of the earth. Which is something that I had to relearn at Undeadburg from all the hollows ganging up on me. I had to relearn that. Also, movement speed is a lot slower. It's a lot slower than I remember. Especially when you're in Elden Ring, where everything moves like grease lightning. Everything here is just kind of like, yeah, we'll move when you say we'll move, you know. Everything is very deliberate and precise, and overall, I just think it's very interesting what the heck happens here. You could tell the gaps in the combat. It's not as seamless as something like Elden Ring or even Dark Souls 3. Everything is a lot more deliberately placed on where everything goes, and you know what? I kind of like that. I think it gives it its own identity, and while it dates it a bit, I think it's kind of charming in how everything works in its way. Almost like we're playing a turn-based system, but a little bit faster. Another thing is, I kept pressing the triangle slash Y button to sit at the bonfires when, you go with the X slash... Is that an X? A slash X button. So it's just kind of like, I kept un-two-handing my sword, which is something I still do. I only two-hand weapons. I like the two-hand weapons. I don't use shields or anything like that. I prefer a good old-fashioned two-handed approach, and yeah, that's just how it is with me. I really like that one. Next thing I noticed is that the bosses are, like I said, very deliberate. And one thing you have to unlearn going from Elden Ring to this is there are no delayed attacks. There's not a lot of delayed attacks, let's say that. I was preparing for delayed attacks when a boss was about to strike, but no, they just strike just then. Which is something you have to unlearn when you go back to Dark Souls 1 is bosses go a lot sooner. There are no delayed attacks for these bosses. They just do what they're gonna do. Which is refreshing and also a little frustrating when you've been playing Elden Ring, which is basically delayed attacks galore. This one, they just get right down to business, and the other bosses were kind of easy. Like, you go for the Silent Demon to the Taurus Demon, it's actually pretty easy. It's not very hard at all. Then you hit something like the Gargoyles, which were meant to be a total roadblock, and I gotta admit, I had some trouble with them because I haven't fought against the Gargoyles in a while. So I got him. I had the trouble, but I got him at the end. I got them at the end. So yeah, it's just kind of interesting how a boss that on paper is not that difficult kind of sneaks up on you because you are not used to it. Like the gargoyles, it's a very make or break for the game, and it basically tells you whether or not you are going to be this. In the filter boss for Elden Ring, I would say that'd be Margit, and the filter boss for something like Dark Souls 3, I think would be the filter boss for Dark Souls 3. I guess Gundyr is a good enough filter boss for the first one, but yeah, that's just something I noticed for this. Also, a lot of the weapons are a lot more. They do a lot less damage off of that because the damage values for your enemies F pull are not crazy in this game. And in Elden Ring, they can get a little wild, especially in this DLC where you could do like 1,000 damage a hit and it does nothing on these bosses. In this one, you have a Claymore that does 200 damage. It takes a decent size of their health bar off, which is very interesting. Very interesting how different this starts out. Yeah, also, you could kind of have a feel for how to get through these levels. Like, I was having trouble getting through these hollows with the Chandler. Those are the most annoying hollows in the game. Very annoying, and trying to get through them. So I had to find a certain rhythm to get through them. Another thing of this thing is the bosses are not typically that hard, but the problem is getting to the bosses, which is hard. Like, the gargoyles, I don't think are that hard, despite them being a spike in difficulty. I don't see the gargoyles as being particularly hard in and of themselves. Hard part is getting to them every single time, because you gotta go through the Boulder Knight, gotta go through the Chandler, which I already killed the Chandler, and you gotta go through the frickin' hollow crackhead. So that is the most annoying part, go through all this. So yeah, it just kind of reminds me of everything. And also how cheap smithing is. In Elden Ring, smithing is really expensive. In this game, it's pretty inexpensive, which I do think is a nice little change of pace, how easy it is to smith, and how kind of quaint the smithing is in this game. It's just kind of easy enough. And upgrading your armor. Upgrading your armor is really interesting. It's something that I don't think any other Dark Souls game has, so it's got novelty going for it. So yeah, it's just a few interesting things. When you go back to Dark Souls 1, it feels a little quaint, I'm not gonna lie. It's just kind of interesting. Anyways, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experience going back from Elden Ring to Dark Souls, and well, I got some more Elden Ring plays, so you know what? I'll talk about that later. I probably have a video about that this coming week, because woo, I have a lot to say about this DLC, and I'll catch you next time.